Okay, so today I'll be responding to the claim that oil rigs have a negative impact on the world. And my opponent's secondary claims are that oil rigs are disruptive to wildlife and land, oil rigs create more water pollution, and that oil rigs create more air pollution. To respond to her first claim, supporting claim, oil rigs can actually benefit wildlife. According to Dr. Milton Love, a research biologist from the Marine Science Institute at UC Santa Barbara, claimed that the oil rigs of the California coast serve as a dwelling for a surprisingly large number of rockfishes. They're actually important species to our ecology because they prevent overfishing, and they're an apex predator, so they keep other fishes in check. And Jeremy Clays, a postdoctoral researcher at Occidental College, says the same principle that makes offshore oil rigs sustainable habitat for rockfishes could be used to design future ocean energy infrastructures. And one of my opponent's evidence were that that oil rigs damage animals' organs such as the liver, kidney, spleen, or brain. But according to Jeff Short, a supervisory researcher for the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the overall environmental impact of oil drilling is difficult to conclude due to the scarcity of thorough studies. Most wild animals are actually able to quickly remove PAH, a toxin associated with oil wells, from their bodies. And according to Eric Potter, he also claimed that the setup of oil rigs hasn't affected any wildlife. They congregate near the pipeline, but it didn't seem to bother them. And for my opponent's secondary claim, she stated that oil rigs create more water pollution, and she gave the evidence of the Gulf oil spill that's known as Deepwater Horizon. But these accidents lead to the development of better safety Okay, oil rigs accidents lead to a process of making better trade-offs between risks. Charles Perrow, a Yale University sociologist, said that technologies sometimes fail because the problem is just something that never occurred to the designers. And this will lead to developers fixing a problem that happened in cases such as the Deepwater Horizon oil rig. And for my opponent's third supporting claim, she stated that oil rigs create more air pollution, and one of her evidence was that different than housing developments and plots of land necessary for agricultural purposes are necessary for survival, whereas there's alternative sources for fuel. So oil rigs are not necessary to keep the world running. But it's true that there are alternative sources for fuels, but it takes too much time, and it has its consequences. So for instance, the natural gas, it takes several years to develop, and the infrastructure for gas to liquids take a lot of time too. And natural gas is only 2/3 of oil production, thus natural gas would deplete much faster than oil. And for all her three supporting claims, she relies on evidence of environmental damages that oil rigs cause, and but these risks need to be taken because oil is one of the most fundamental necessities in the world. They lead to the production of important materials like plastic, and they've been the core energy source for our world since the 1950s. And 70% of oil goes to the fueling of all sorts of transportation, and oil rigging prevents the dependence of other third world countries, which positively affects our country's overall income. And due to fast-paced technological advances, oil rigging can eventually be done without damaging the environment and disturbing the plant and animal habitat. And the positive aspects of oil rigging outweighs the cost. Georgetown University economist Robert Hahn and Milken Institute economist Peter Passel created a scenario where it would cost $17 per barrel to produce oil at $50 per barrel, and $20 per barrel at $100 per barrel. With this, they found out that at $50 per barrel, it would yield a total of $578 billion in benefits. And they also calculated the cost of producing this oil, and they found that it would amount to $255 billion. And with that, the benefits would actually be $323 billion greater than the costs.
All right, good start on the organizational issues at the beginning. You label the advocate's points pretty clearly. On that first point, you've got a lot of good counter evidence on the environmental impact. You mentioned the rockfish. You talk about how expanding oil, or actually oceanic energy platforms, could use these environmental techniques, and so it's more generalizable. You mentioned that there's an overall potential benefit, and you also have a piece of information that says, look, it's hard to assess this information, but you've given a few examples of places where there's been a positive benefit. So there's good direct counterclaim information here. What there isn't is much discussion of the evidence that the advocate used to prove their point, or whether or not they were reasoning in a fair way. So you've presented a rebuttal argument here, which is not a bad thing, but I'm not exactly sure that the rebuttal argument automatically means that anything that the advocate said is untrue. It just gives us a reason to believe some of these things might have a positive impact as well. So how are we supposed to decide if they can demonstrate some harms and you can demonstrate some advantages, which are we supposed to believe? That is the thing that where you need to be able to give us a little bit more of a criteria. On the second point, the advocate, I think it was a she, relied primarily on the Gulf oil spill, and you talked about you basically had this idea that says when we have these accidents, we get better safety techniques or protocols as a result. You had a little bit of trouble coming up with a way of describing that, and then basically you just went to the went to the evidence and hoped that that would make the claim for you. It says, look, they get a new problem, they figure out a solution to that particular problem. That's one of those things that happens. Which is not a bad argument to make, but it seems like it's not as directly responsive to the point as an argument that says that these are relatively infrequent. When they do occur, the problems can be handled and managed in some way. And in fact, then the argument could be, and when these problems do come up, they discover new ways to prevent them in the future. This seems like it's the third argument in a string of arguments, and we didn't get the first two arguments. And then the air pollution argument, you basically, it's about alternatives, even though they put it in the context of air pollution. You suggest that there are problems with alternatives when it comes to cost or infrastructure. The one alternative that you talk about is natural gas. I'm not sure why that is the one that is most natural. I'm not sure that the advocate was citing natural gas as the alternative that they were advocating. And then there was still advantages to using oil products because of the plastics and those kinds of issues. So, I mean, you do suggest that there are needs that exist for some of the resources that we're getting from the oil rigs. I think that's an important thing to put into context. when you're presenting some statistical information at the end, I don't know that you have a very clear idea about what all this information means, and I don't think that it's clarified very well for the audience either. Sometimes it sounds like you're reading information without having thought about how does this respond to the point that the advocate's making, and that should always be the clearest thing in your refutation argument. All right, thank you.